Good to see you, you poker nut, you. I got a quick poker question for you. What is the most profitable type of game to play in? The most profitable type of game to play in? Have a think. I would suggest to you the most profitable game to play in is a loose game, right? A loose game. Ideally, a loose sort of passive game, maybe with a couple of spewy aggressive players, but basically a loose game where people are playing suboptimal hands, too many hands, they're putting too much money into the pot with bad hands. That is the easiest game to make money in. All right, question number 2. What is the most frustrating type of game to play in? The most frustrating type of game to play in, there's a trick here. If one or two of you are onto it. The most frustrating type of game to play in is a loose game, And the reason for that is you are going to face more multi-way pots. More players are going to have hands because there's more of them in the pot. And if they're loose players, they're going to go to showdown more often, which means they're going to see full value for their hands, which means they're going to catch more cards on the turn and river to beat you. So we've got this problem, right? The games we want to play in, the loose games, are also the most frustrating. And so we need a specific set of tactics to beat them, right? We need to adjust to these games. Now, I know that there's a decent chance you do play in these games, and they come in basically two forms. Cash games, where people are playing loose and maybe a little calling station-y, and also tournaments up to about halfway through the tournament. As you get deeper in a tournament, people tend to get tighter because they get more worried about going bust, the blinds get bigger, the stakes are raised, the money comes in. But for a lot of the early levels, tournaments will often play like this, especially if players have got a lot of starting chips. So this is a vital component of you being a winning poker player, which makes me excited to give you this advice. So let's talk a little bit about how we beat these games. So first thing, the fundamental. Where is your profit going to come from? Where is your money going to come from? Well, if you're playing in a loose game where a lot of players go to the flop and then too many players go to showdown in the river, the number one source of your profit is going to be having the best hand. Right? That's going to be your number one source of profit. Your bluffing opportunities are going to be lower. You're going to have the best hand to win, right? So number one with the bullet is mastering value betting. Master value betting. Value betting. Value betting, obviously, just in case you haven't heard the term, is where we make a bet for value. We make a bet where we presume we have the best hand and we want to be called by our opponents. Now, the thing about this is people don't focus enough on it. What we tend to do is we tend to think, well, having a good hand's easy. I just bet and hopefully I get paid and hopefully my aces don't get cracked or whatever. But we kind of write it off as a skill. This is a huge skill. And if you're going to play in these loose games and win, you need to get better at it. If you're sitting there thinking, I get so frustrated in my poker games because people keep putting bad beats on me, my good hands don't hold up. You talk about value betting, Nick, but my aces always get cracked. You just haven't put enough effort into developing your value game, because I guarantee you're not winning enough in the pots where you have the best hand and you get called to pay for the times that you get unlucky and still show a big profit. That's how you beat these games. I can't stop you getting unlucky. No one can stop you getting unlucky. But what you can do is control how much we win when you have the best hand. So what you should be focusing your efforts on is experimenting with and getting better at two things. Betting with weaker hands in these games. So when you're facing players that call too much, you should be value betting more often, right? Stands to reason, with hands that you wouldn't value bet against a thinking player. And then secondly, and this is a huge one, literally and figuratively, you want to be making your bets bigger, right? You want to be betting bigger. If your opponents will call anyway, if they are loose and they will call anyway, right? Every time you don't bet the maximum that they call, you potentially have lost money. If you're in a pot where there's 100 in the middle and you always bet 80, because that's just the amount you bet when there's 100 in the middle, but your opponent would have called 500, well done. You just cost yourself 420 chips, right? So you need to start experimenting with bigger bets. Now, sometimes it won't be the right thing to do. I'm not saying always. I'm just saying you need to experiment with it. You need to understand what bet sizes you can push in what spots against what players. So you need to focus on that if you're going to beat these loose games. All right, number 2 is a mental skill, and it's patience. Patience. The most frustrating thing about these games is when you actually don't make a hand, right? We've said where our money comes from, value betting, having hands, but it's possible, because it's poker, to go a whole session or all of like the first 5 levels of a tournament without having a big hand, without having a value betting spot that's really good. Or you get a hand and everyone folds. That is part of poker. You cannot let it affect you. You have to be patient to make value hands, because you are going to have nights where you have 7 or 8 amazing value betting spots, trust me, and you're going to win like 6 buy-ins at cash, or you're going to have a big stack in the middle of a tournament because of it. But that's not going to be every day, right? We know everything in poker goes up and down. It's a small margin game. You must have heard me say that by now. So we have to be patient, and you have to just sit there and understand that you can't force it, right? It's very tempting if everyone's going crazy and everyone's like playing tons of hands. There are ways to exploit that. I'll talk about that in a second, but you can't just force it. You can't just make it happen. This isn't like a running race where halfway through you kind of grit your teeth and dig in and go, right, here I come, I'm going to do this now, because you can't influence the cards and the spots and your opponents. So you must have patience and understand how you make money in these games. It's absolutely vital. Work on your patience. Number 3 in these games is to play position. We're going to do all the P's. Position. The reason I think position is super important in these games is that we can play more hands. If the game is playing loose, and that means there's more value in the middle, there are more players, that means we're getting a better price on our bets and our calls, and just a better incentive to try and win the pot. So that means we can loosen up a bit ourselves. However, you want to do this by position. You don't want to start playing bad hands in early position, because no matter how much better you are than these kind of loose passive idiots, or however you want to view them, don't view them like that, however much better you are than them, if you're out of position post-flop, your decisions are still going to be difficult, right? They're still going to be difficult. So don't get out of line in early position, but you can get more out of line in late position, right? You can get more out of line in late position. If you've got 5 limpers to you and you're on the button, well, now you've got a great chance to enter a pot cheaply with the right kind of hand. If you've got a raise and 4 calls in front of you, same thing applies. You're going to be able to play the rest of this hand in position. You're going to be able to make good decisions. I pretty much guarantee, unless you're already a massively winning player at your limit, that your position game isn't good enough. I know you'll play more, you'll have heard this before, you'll play more hands in late position than early, but that should be a really big gap, especially in loose games. So make sure it is. Work on playing more hands around the button in the cutoff and the hijack, less hands up front. Very important. So how does that translate into the type of hands we're going to play in these loose games? So you want to do 2 things. You want to play a certain type of hand and avoid a certain type of hand. Avoiding the wrong hand is really important, so I'm going to go with that. Avoid reverse implied. Reverse implied hand types. Avoid reverse implied hand types. What am I talking about? What is reverse implied? And how does it apply to this? Well, if we're playing in a loose game and most of the flops are going to be multi-way and potentially we're going to go to the showdown, there are some hands that play well in that environment and some hands that play badly. The hands that play well are the hands that need a greater odds of reward to pay off, and also the hands that can build a stronger type of hand post-flop. So hands that can make straights and flushes and sets do very well in these games. Hands that don't tend to do that do badly. So hands that have good implied odds to them, so not just the odds of what you're getting now, but the implied odds of what you can win from your opponents. So the obvious example is a small pair, right? A small pocket pair isn't a strong hand immediately in a lot of situations, but if we make our set, we can often win a lot of money off our opponents. The opposite of that in these games is a hand like King 10 offsuit, right? You don't want to be messing with a hand like King 10 offsuit in a 6-way pot, even if you have position, because what's going to happen is a lot of times you're just going to miss the flop, but when you do hit the flop, you're going to make a 1-pair hand most of the time, right? You're going to make a 1-pair hand most of the time, and you're in a reverse implied odds spot, which is that you're probably going to either win a small pot because nobody makes anything, or if players are putting a lot of money into the pot, you're going to lose a big pot because you're often beaten because your 1-pair hand isn't strong enough. So you want to avoid these disconnected, bigger card types that look like you can play them, but that actually can get you into trouble. Now, I'm not saying you always need to muck, ace-jack offsuit, all right? That's quite a severe thing to do if you're in late position, but consider it. And also consider dumping it quickly if you see a lot of action post-flop. And really focus on expanding your late position hand range by playing more suited cards. You know, you're going to want to play King 10 suited, right? All of your nut flush cards like aces suited are really great to play. Your connected cards are good to play in late position. Expand your hand range that way and try and avoid these kind of trap hands in these loose games because, you know, King 9 offsuit, it might be tempting to jump in with a hand like that, but it's not going to play well 6 ways against loose opponents post-flop. So it's better to just dump it and not worry too much about it. So make sure you're adjusting your hand range to take account of the game conditions. That's very important. Now, number 5 is to ask, can you isolate? I'm going to put isolate question mark. In some of these loose games, you'll have situations where you can isolate bad players. In some of them, you won't. But you should always be asking yourself, can I isolate? So by isolate, what I mean is to eliminate some of the players still to act behind you so that you are heads up with the bad player or bad players. So let's say 2 weak players limp in front of you and you have a medium strength hand. Don't do this with junk. Don't do this with a worse hand than their hand range because otherwise you're putting money in a bad situation. It's easy to get carried away with this play and start raising with 8-3 offsuit because they're bad players. Don't do that, right? Let's say you pick up the, I don't know, ace 10, right? And you've got 2 limpers. If you raise here, does it isolate them or not? So will other players fold because you've raised or not? It's an important question to answer. If they will, then you can go ahead and raise. If they won't, and you're going to raise and 5 of them are going to call, then it's probably best not to do it because actually you're just going to end up bloating the pot in a big multi-way pot and you're going to be out of position. So same applies to 3-betting, right? Somebody raises, somebody else calls, it gets to you. You've got a hand that you could think about 3-betting, like ace queen off or something. And, you know, you need to ask yourself, if I 3-bet, am I going to get players to fold and get heads up with these guys? Because then it's a great value bet against these players. But if you're in the early stages of the tournament and everyone's just going to call because they've got 20,000 chips, maybe not the right play. So ask yourself, can I isolate? Always be looking for the isolation play because there's lots of value in thinning the field against bad players, but there's very little value in pumping up the pot when everyone's just going to call. So ask yourself, will isolation work or not? Be aware, number 6, be aware that you need bigger hands to win, right? So multi-way equals bigger hands. If you're playing a really loose game with like 5 players to every flop, and please tell me where that game is because I want to come. But if you are playing in a game like that, this goes back to the starting hands that you pick. It's going to be hard to win big pots with 1 pair, even if it's an over pair, right? I'm not saying you won't win pots with that, but it is going to be hard because post-flop, if your opponents are putting in big bets and raises, then you are probably beat. The more players there are in a pot, the higher strength of hand you're going to need to win it if everybody goes to showdown. It's just the way that the math work, right? There's more combinations of hands out. There's more likely to be a hand that's connected strongly with the flop. So just bear that in mind when you're playing. The relative hand strength changes. It's a different ball game playing 5-way flops compared to playing heads up flops. Now that doesn't mean that when you have a strong hand, you shouldn't be pounding away, right? If you make a set, doesn't matter if you've got 4 or 5 opponents, you want to be getting some money in there. Now, you are going to get outdrawn more often because there's more opponents, so you have to have that patience. But when your set holds up, you're going to win a monster pot because you're going to win that 4-way pot. So just bear that concept in mind. And then finally, one last thing, you're not going to be able to bluff as much in these games. That doesn't mean that you should be constantly on the back foot and just playing completely tight poker, right? Always still look for bluffing opportunities. Even in a loose game, you will sometimes end up in a heads-up pot or a pot with just 2 opponents. And bluffs still work in poker no matter how... I think this is something people kind of do is they go, oh, that player's a calling station, so I'll never bluff them. Well, there are a couple of players that you might find like that, but most times, even if a player has a calling station tendency, they can still sometimes be bluffed. One way that you can stay on the front foot in loose games and keep, accumulating chips is look for orphan pots. Orphan pots. So we're going to steal orphan pots. Now, an orphan pot is a pot with no home. Sad face. A pot with no home. It's an orphan. This is a pot where post-flop, everybody's lost interest. right? And you'll see this online when people check really quickly. You'll see it live when people actually look physically disinterested. You can pick up on these little bits of extra information. Or you can just be in a situation where people have checked round a couple of times. Now, the phenomenon you have to be a little bit careful with here is that sometimes someone will call to keep you honest if there's like a 5-way pot. And this comes down as much to judgment as anything. And you will get a feel for this the more you look for these opportunities. But you will definitely be in situations where you can just pick up a pot because nobody else is that interested because everyone's missed the flop. Or there's only 3 of you in that particular pot and everyone's checked the flop and nobody's improved on the turn, or the turn's a scare card, or whatever it is. But the point I want to get across to you is look for these opportunities, because it's very easy, because you're trying to be patient and make hands, it's very easy to get defensive and switch off in these loose games. Whereas actually you still want to be looking for opportunities to pick up free money, because that's what we're here to do. So there we go, loose games. Very, very important you master this if you want to beat the lower limits, and also if you just want to exploit weak players, because when you get in these games, they are a complete profit center for you, right? I know I said they can be frustrating, but they are a massive source of chips for you, providing you master how to play in them and you adjust in the ways I've talked about. So good luck with it. Seek out these games, learn how to beat them. It's the easiest way to put money on your bottom line and get big stacks in tournaments or cash games. Go ahead and put this into action, and stay patient, stay calm, and keep thinking about the opportunity at hand, and you will do really good in these games. All right, I hope this has given you a lot of value, stuff to think about and go away and use. If it has, give me that Facebook like, give me a share on social media, Facebook and others, so that we can get the message to other people that will benefit. It's the nice thing to do. Also, leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you think, what your experience is in these games, and however else I can help you in those games or other poker. Can't wait to hear from you. I've loved making this video for you. There'll be another one along very soon.